talking about the R word. Back in the day, R used to be retirement. Now it's this referendum, or this idea of a referendum. And each of you should have one of these. If you have not, if you don't have one, there's somewhere out there. If you have somebody of your on your team, or your grade level team that's not here, if you want to pick one up for them, that's fine. I talked to the high school, secondary, secondary staff this morning at their faculty meeting, and I want to talk to you guys today. I met with the community group on last Wednesday and shared this with them and kind of answered some of their questions. And I want to do the same thing to you guys, and with the understanding that this is going to go out to the community, hopefully community, soon, either as a pamphlet form or a chance for them to view this presentation as they kind of answer, get some of their questions and concerns answered as well. So that's kind of the purpose of this. So with that said, I'm just going to kind of walk through this, and we'll talk a little bit about what it means. And again, I said I'll give you guys a chance to answer some, or ask me some questions. So if you take a look at it, the spring election, this is the resolution that was made on the January 11th board meeting, that a referendum should appear on the April 4th ballot. State statute says it has to be 70 days prior to that date, which means it had to be done by January. I gotta be honest with you, Chuck and I started this process in December, probably the second or third week of December. We always take this year's budget and then we push it forward, clone it, and then we use that to build what next year's budget will look like. And 2 or 3 days before Christmas break, Chuck said, "Hey, you aren't gonna believe this," he said, "but it appears like we're gonna be a little bit short in our budget." And I said, "How is that possible?" Well, open enrollment numbers, we have a huge open enrollment population. Last year, our open enrollment, we were plus 52. We had 52 students, not our residents, that were enrolled and attended our buildings. This year, we have 43 students. Now you think, geez, we lost 9. We lost 9 of our students. Not really. I'll give you an example. 2 weeks before school started, we had a family that lived in the Rapids district, bought a house in the Auburndale district. We enrolled them here, and they determined at that point in time that they wanted to attend the school that they've always attended, and they open enrolled out of Auburndale back to Rapids. 5 students at $10,000 a pop. That's $50,000 that went out of our district. Okay? So it's not, you know, doom and gloom. We're still way above what everybody else. Our neighbors would love to have what we have. But that, again, that's just the reality of the situation. ESSER money. How many of you are familiar with what ESSER money is? ESSER money, it's the emergency or elementary, secondary school emergency relief fund because of COVID. Okay? The federal government said, we know schools are struggling, we want you to stay open, we want to do everything we can, so we're gonna give you federal money into the states, and they can distribute it how they want. Well, it's great. The problem is, the federal government says, we're gonna give you this one-shot deal, we're gonna give it to you for 3 years. Well, this year when the money is gone, that's $250,000 we aren't gonna have anymore. You get it one time and it's gone. And if you don't spend it, you lose it. So there's another $250 on top of that. Insurance costs, if you take a 10% increase in insurance, that's about $120,000. Okay. We've got Wood County Alternative School, we've got Northwest Journey, if we get students in there, that's $300 a day. So it's somewhere around $36,000 to $40,000 to educate one student in Wood County Alternative School or Northwest Journey. So again, add all those up, that's about $500,000. I haven't even talked teacher increase in pay. Right now it's frozen at 0. That's not putting anything in there. We know that that's not gonna happen with CPI hovering around 8%. So it doesn't take long to see how you get to, yeah, we're gonna be short, okay? But that was all right, having that conversation in December, because I said, that's fine, we're good. So I'm downstairs working in my basement, 27th of December, working on a deer head. And I looked at the calendar and thought to myself, I can't believe it's gonna be 2023 in 4 days. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. There's no general election in November in odd number of years. If you wanna pass a referendum, you gotta do it in April, because there is no November general election. You got one shot, and you got one shot only. So I called up Chuck and said, hey, he goes, oh, we got November. I go, no, we don't have November. He checked, and we both checked. I said, no, there's none. It's only April. So that's kind of how all this came about. For those of you that knew or sat in the strategic planning process, we never once used the referendum discussion because we had no idea it was there. Again, it kind of snuck up on us. So, let's go forward here. Why now? Opening that up, assuming the state formula for funding education remains the same as it has since 1994, the expense of the district will exceed the revenues provided by the state by about $550,000. Now, I sent to you guys a couple weeks ago the governor's speech. I'm not going to read his entire speech, but I want to read an excerpt from it, because this is from our own governor in the state of Wisconsin. I'm going to skip some parts and so on, but I like this statement here. Our state has a AAA bond credit rating for the first time in about 40 years. That means we're able to get lower interest rates and save your tax dollars. Our general fund and rainy day fund both ended the last fiscal year at the highest levels ever in our state's 175-year history. We're now expected to end the current biennium with about $6.5 billion in our state coffers and over $1.7 billion in our rainy day or emergency fund. That's over $7 billion extra revenue. $7 billion. That's 1,000 million. That's a lot. Agreed? Right? The difference between paying $1 for something and paying $1,000 is the difference between $1 million and $1 billion. And we got 7 of them. It's a lot. Okay? And that's great news, Wisconsin. It means we can continue our progress making the wise investment we've long needed to, and not because anyone wants to make government bigger, but because Wisconsinites want a government that works and works better. We have roads and bridges to fix, schools to fund, kids to support, communities to keep safe, water to keep clean, and a future we built together after years of neglect that today we must work to protect. We've worked to invest in public education at every level. After a decade of disinvestment, we've passed the largest increase in special education aid in state history. And he goes on. This is the key point. But we know our current funding system is not sustainable. Governor's words, not my words. Our governor's words. For years, communities have raised their own property taxes to keep their local schools afloat. That's us. In fact, did you know last year 109 schools went to operational referendums? Did you know this spring there's 51 more going to operational referendums? There's 410 or 20 school districts in the state. That's 109 and 50, that's a lot, right? He knows it's broke. Evidence shows it's broke. And while some districts have successfully passed referendum to keep schools' lights on, many have tried and failed. This system, funding system, means drastic differences in outcomes for our kids, creating winners and losers, haves and have-nots. Again, governor's words, not mine. He knows it's broke. We know it's broke. So what do we do about it? Onward. Why only 2 years? This is the best one yet. The budget that the state puts out is a biennial budget, meaning it lasts for 2 years. The budget is set to end on June 30th of 2023. Right now, if you read the governor's speech, he says we've got this money and I'm going to invest. He says he's going to invest $2 billion additional funding in public education. Right now it's around 15 billion. He wants to put 2 more into that. That's a huge increase. We have a Democratic governor. We have Republican-controlled Senate and Republican-controlled House. Okay? The governor says, this is what I want to do. It must be approved by the Joint Finance Committee, who consists of 12 Republicans and 4 Democrats. You think the governor's going to get $2 billion for public education? It's not going to happen. Let's be honest, right? But if we could get something, that would be awesome. I'm going to assume with this referendum that we're going to get nothing. We're going to get what we've got the last 3 years. 0 per pupil increase, 0 increase in aid, 0 breaks. That's what I'm assuming. If we continue to use the same funding formula, we're going to be about $600,000 short. If the governor gets anything of that $2 billion, and the Joint Finance Committee says we need to give them something because these schools are struggling to survive with operational referendums, then we won't need this. This vote yes gives us the permission to go to the local community and say, we need additional funds to keep our schools going. If the governor comes through and the Joint Finance Committee comes through and they approve a biennial budget beginning July 1st, that funds education adequately, it makes up the $600,000 that we're losing, we don't have to go to the public. But by then, if we needed to, it'd be too late because we don't have a November election to do it. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? Why we're putting this ahead? We don't really know. Now, it would be nice to have a budget by 1st of July. How well do you think those Republicans and Democrats are going to get along? If you've seen anything or read anything lately, there's battles, lines being drawn, and we're going to do this, we aren't going to do that. They're throwing vouchers in, they're throwing in a set amount per student that attends school. I mean, there's just so many battle lines that are being drawn. I can remember 10 years ago, we did not see a budget until October in one of the biennial budgets. Let me ask you this, how many of you would survive? You got expenses for 2, 3, 4 months, and you don't know what your income's gonna be? You don't know what your expenses may be, but you have to make a living, you have to run a business? I'm fully expecting that is a possibility. That could happen with public education. We may not see what that biennial budget looks like in 2023, ending in 2025, until end of September, middle of October, end of October. We just don't know. But by then, if we needed money, we can't go to referendum in November because it's no election. We have to wait till the following April to try that on an even number year. So that's kind of the background as to in terms of why we're doing this. All right, moving on to the pamphlet. What effect does that have? Well, what I did at the bottom of that pamphlet, if you take a look, it lists our neighbors, our districts. I think that's everybody that butts up to us, isn't it? Corner-wise, or north, south, east, or west. And I've listed the mill rates. That is how much you pay for $100,000 of property value. Auburndale, you can see it, our mill rate right now is $68.80. You'll pay local property tax for each $100,000 of property that you own. We spend between 3 things: transportation, staffing, and facilities, $13,006 on each of our students in our district. If you take a look at our mill rate compared to our neighbors and what they spend per student, our mill rate's not the highest, it's not the lowest, but look at the money we spend on our students. substantially less than anybody else. If I take $600,000 and I divide that by approximately 750 students, that's $800 per student. By passing this referendum, we can put ourselves from the $13,006 that we're spending on a student to $13,806 per student, which puts us in the ballpark with our neighbors. I'd like to think our kids deserve to have the same opportunities as those kids do in Pittsville and Stratford and Spencer, don't they? And the nice thing is, yeah, that's great, but Mr. Yeski, how much is it gonna cost us to do that? Take a look at the chart in the upper right. What does our mill rate do if we pass a referendum? It costs you zero more percentage-wise than it does this year. We can generate additional revenues and not raise the mill rate a cent. Why is it a 2-year non-recurring referendum? Because we need 2 years to get us through this budget till we find out what the heck is gonna go on. We know the funding formula is broke. The governor tells us the funding formula is broke. Everybody knows it. We need some legislators and government to get together and fix it. Fix it so we don't have to keep doing this. It's not fair to our kids. This is what you'll read on the ballot. It's $600,000 for each year for 2 years. It gets us through that budget so we know what it looks like. And again, it gives us permission to do it. If that budget comes in, the governor wants to give $350 per student additional aid for next year and $650 after that the following year. To put that in perspective, the last 3 years, 3 years ago, we got, in the 1920 school year, we had $742 per student. And then the year after that, we got $742 per student. And the year after that, we got $742 per student. In the year after that, this year, we got $742 per student. In other words, they didn't raise it a damn cent. He's suggesting that we put in $350 on top of that $742. If we get $350 per kid at 750 kids, we got it. We can do this. We don't need to go this way. Give us something. Give us anything. Raise a generalized aid. Do something. Give us something that we can work with. But if we don't, this referendum gives us the opportunity to ask the local people to support our kids and support our school. On the back page, what does it look like? If passed, the operating referendum will not increase the district's tax rate the first year. The second year, it would go up about $53 or $1 a week for each $100,000 of property that you own. Somebody asks, why is that? Well, here's the classic with state funding formula. I'm gonna try to simplify this as much as I can. If you know this, then I apologize for treating you like as though you're ignorant. Schools are funded through 4 sources: federal government, state government, local revenues, and grants or categorical, okay? State funding used to be, the rule used to be 2/3 funding. Ours is about 64% funded through the state, okay? Then there is the federal government, somewhere around, I would say 5 to 7%. Our grants are a very small percentage. So the majority of that needs to come from local revenues, which is somewhere around 25 to 30%, somewhere in that range, okay? The nice thing is with funding formula is if you don't spend it, the state thinks you don't need it. So when they collect your money, and our budget's about $11.5 million school budget, they'll say, okay, here's your, your 6,000 or your 7,000 from the state government, and here is your here's your 2 million from the federal government, and here's your grants, and here's your 3 million from your local taxpayers that you collect. When you spend that money, you spend your money first. Your money's used up, then you eventually move down the road until you get to the state money. So there's no advantage to save it, because if you don't spend that $7 million, the next year the state says, you didn't use all that 7 million. I guess you don't need 7 million next year, we're gonna give you 6.5. And now you gotta make up the difference more locally. So you must spend to get. It's a weird formula, isn't it? Right? You gotta spend it. So as a result then, the following year, property taxes, like I said, would go up approximately $53 per 100,000. Almost done here. Since 2016, again, we're not alone. Over 70% of Wisconsin's 421 school districts have gone to referendum to meet their operational needs of their districts. The funding formula started in 1994, and it's getting worse, not better, in terms of funding education. You can't do it. It's broke. Have we done this before? And I think this is pretty telling. We passed a 5-year non-recurring operational referendum in 2008. We'll take and add 5 years to 2008, you get about 2013. We had enough to meet our costs till 2013, tighten our belts a little bit, maybe reduce some budgets, looked at some staffing, tried to reduce it down, and we did that for 3 years. And then 2016 comes along, and guess what happens? Can't tighten anymore, right? We're snugged up as much as we can get. We gotta spend some money on our kids, so we go for a non-recurring referendum in 2016 for 3 years. I think it was a total of 900,000. I think it was 200,000 the first year, 300,000 the second year, 400,000 the next year. That would have expired in 2019. What do we have right now? 4 years. What have we done for 4 years? Tightened our belts, kind of held on to what we've got. We got a little bit of COVID relief money, ESSER money, but they told us ESSER money's gone. Federal government's not helping anymore. So the state said, hey, you had ESSER money, you don't need any. So they did. They didn't give us anything. You had ESSER money. You don't want to increase in state aid. That's why we're in the situation we're in. And the nice thing is, we're fiscally responsible enough where we've kept our mill rate down, right? We've kept a pretty good educational program by not raising taxes, not going to our local taxpayers to meet those needs. When one ends, we don't get another one to continue, right? We try to make the adjustments. We try to reduce as much as we can. That's why we're going to referendum. Again, it's for our kids, it's for to keep programs going, it's for opportunities that we want that are just comparable to everybody else that they have. Questions? None? If you have any, if you want to give me some feedback along the way, by all means, please call me or contact me. I'd appreciate it. Thank you for your attention. You guys enjoy the rest of your meeting.